Hey guys, welcome back to another Flesh and Blood video. This video is proudly brought to you by the House of Cards, the official sponsor of my stream. Be sure to check out the link in the description below for all of your Flesh and Blood needs. Hey guys, welcome back to another Flesh and Blood video. Today I have a very special treat for you. A good buddy of mine, Taylor Crawford, recently got second place at the Baltimore Calling playing Lexi, and we have him here today, and he's going to break down his list and talk about the do's and the don'ts of playing Lexi and the good and bad matchups and cards he likes and might change or might keep. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to him.
Hey, yeah. So at the calling, I ended up 14-2 in CC throughout the calling. My two losses were to T and the eventual winner, Merrick, which is actually a local. He's about 2 hours north of here. I see him at our ProQuest and RTNs and stuff. So we sat down from each other. We knew each other. It was a good time. It wasn't as intense as I expected for the finals to be. Which was great, but now that I still have to go play a ProQuest with him and like play against him and be like, damn, nice Crown of Providence. Damn, that's gonna hurt a little bit. Yeah, so he was on Dash and I was on Lexi, of course. So the list I played was this 80, which was mainly inspired by Matt McGinnis's list from Richmond. When Outsiders first came out, me and my teammate Aaron, we kind of knew that Lexi was going to be the de facto best deck. It's just that, the last Majestic weapon from Tales of Aria is still legal, so it's probably the best thing in the game with Voltaire, strike twice. We also knew that certain cards are definitely overrated, so Bolt and Shot, Heat Seeker, Endless Arrow, of course, Endless Arrow being the best zero drop arrow by a long margin. Then we saw Infecting Shot, and Infecting Shot really surprised us with his damage output and threat of damage. Laced with Blood Rod is also a good buff. Premeditate, of course, is a busted card, but I only play 2 in the main board. I'm not as big on that card as the majority of other Lexi players, but I definitely understand its purpose in the deck. So when we saw Matt McGinnis's list, we messaged Matt W, which we're good friends with, and we kind of just like chatted about like what Lexi's looking like on their end, and we ended up here. Of course, some things are definitely sparing, like the one Art of War is a little bit different than most players. So after the Pro Tour, I went 2-2 in CC, and I was like, the deck could be a little bit better. So we went back to the hotel and tuned it. We tuned to some ideas that I wanted one Art of War. And the idea of the one Art of War was a mini Rain Razors is great, and being able to filter an all blue hand is fantastic, especially in Arsenal with a Tunic. But I didn't ever want to draw 2 of them. So we just threw one in the deck and just called it a day and hoped that I drew at the right time. And I did. Every time.
So when we talk about Art of War, generally when you see Art of War being played, it's played as a 3-of. Like, it's something you want to see as many times as possible throughout the course of the game. And, you said you wanted one, kind of to serve as like a mini Rain Razors. Is there a reason that you didn't want more than one?
So 95% of the time that I ever played Art of War, I wanted it to be on my Tunic turn. So if I ever had 2 Art of Wars, it would get stranded in my hand, and it would just be used as a yellow pitch with no block. And having a no block in certain hand configurations is just a no-go, especially in the mirror. Sometimes in the mirror, they'll throw a Heat Seeker at you,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll look at your hand and you'll be like, okay, I wish I had, my Perch Grapplers in a 3-block here. So to kind of minimize that, we kind of threw less non-attack actions than an average deck. I believe that our main board only has 36 arrows, if I remember correctly, and then we used to add arrows in. So,
Okay.
There was a game against a Briar in which I had an Art of War block from Arsenal on a CNC.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was great, but I stared at my hand for a good 5 minutes while the CNC was on the stack going, is that the right play? I don't think I've ever chose this mode. I'm like, well, I guess the arrow will block for 4.
I mean, that play does sound a little out of pocket, just from looking at it. But I mean, if the rest of your hand doesn't officially cover Command and Conquer, then I could definitely see that being like a useful backup line as a way to like try and save some damage and your arsenal.
Yeah, because like my hand was like Rain Razors, Premeditate, Codex, and I was like, oh my god, it's the worst hand ever. And then I was like, wait just a minute, I can Art of War, from Arsenal, block with it, and then play out my buffs, and then play out a Codex and come with like a Searing for like 10, or I think it was 13 at the time. Yeah, so let's talk about card by card. Bolt and Shot. It's the glue of the deck. This is the card that I think pre-calling you will always want to start your turn with, but I think post-calling it will probably become the second arrow because of Frailty Trap, which is a card that I use in my sideboard just for the mirror, and it definitely does work. There was probably about 3 Lexi games in which I would play this, and it would end their turn off the bat. So you play this onto a Bolton Shot with +1, and if they don't have snaps up, it ends the turn. They lose their action point unless they have a Rain Razors.
So that's a really cool line of play, because I feel like a lot of people very instinctively go, oh, Voltaire +1, come in with Bolton Shot for 5, go again. And so the Frailty Trap is neat. Offhand question here. I noticed that you're playing 2 in your sideboard. Do you think that card being that good in the mirror warrants playing 3 during Road to National season, or do you think 2 is like a very solid number for that card?
I actually, in my Road to Nationals ideas, I actually cut it because this list went public. Because this list went public, my thought process is if you know about it, it's a lot less effective. It's still going to be a 0 for 5 sometimes, but in replace, I'm actually playing Weathering Shots, red.
Okay.
Yeah, to be a little bit more proactive than reactive. Yeah, so that's a little interesting thing, but I do think that this card, surprising your opponent, is probably the best use of it. But now that the tech is, public, I do think its usability is definitely going to go down a little bit.
Okay, that's interesting to hear about that. I mean, and it definitely makes sense because you might be able to, get somebody in the early rounds of a Road to Nationals, maybe a less experienced Lexi player. Yes, but I feel like if you're playing against a veteran Lexi player who's put in the time and put in the hours, they'll be sure to play around that. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, so Bolton Shot is just bread and butter. It's one of the best cards in the deck. Drill Shot, on the other hand, that is the best arrow to draw turns 1 through 3.
Okay.
Drill Shot on turns 1 through 3 feels like the nuts whenever you draw it. The majority of matches with Lexi, I feel, really determine on your opponent's understanding of armor. In the Bravo matchup, Oldham matchup is really important. Not so much the mirror. Briar and Viserai is pretty important. It's understanding the breakpoints of every arrow in your deck and how your opponent can interact with you on that breakpoint. So whenever you play like a Drill Shot for 5 to end the turn, they either going to give you 2 cards or an equipment. Whenever you play this card, its only goal is to eat equipment. Don't think about it as damage. So like a Drill Shot blue coming in for 3 at the end of a turn if you have a bad hand. It's just 3 damage. It's going to eat a card. But if you have like a Codex into a red Drill Shot and you make your opponent discard, it is insane. So that's the way I view my Drill Shots in my deck. After about turn 5 or 6, they are just completely and utterly blank. That's how I want them to be, though.
That's a really interesting way to look at it, because I feel like there's been a couple times during our testing that I have been punished by a Codex or a Drill Shot when I wasn't playing around it, and they've gotten equipment, put a counter on my Rampart, anything like that. And, if you're playing Oldham, counter on the Rampart, on turns 1 through 3 will probably end the game almost. Yeah. So that's definitely a good way to look at that card.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because the 3 Oldhams I played at the calling, all 3 had very different setups to me. One of them had Anathos, one of them had Stalagmite, and the other one had Rampart. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it was like they would reveal their hero, and I'm like, Oldham, so great. I'm expecting Rampart, and
right.
Anathos, and I'm just like, oh, he's about to try to crush my head in.
That is interesting. Wow, I feel like if that was your game plan, you probably just want to play Bravo.
That's what I was thinking too. I was like, interesting.
Huh.
So Endless Arrow.
Here we go.
What can be said about this card that hasn't been said before? It's Snatch that blocks 3. It's really good. It's a dragon killer. I mean, anything that you think has been said about this card has been said. Uh, this is the best card in the deck. It's not close. If you swing the same endless arrow 3 times in a game, your win rate increases by 25%. Simple as that.
I'd believe that. I was like, Endless
Yeah.
Arrow is an extremely powerful card. And I know a lot of times when people don't block an Endless Arrow, I know I've watched a lot of Lexi players this past weekend go, okay, this is my Bullseye Bracer's turn. Like, this is where I'm going to push as much damage as I can because I know I'm getting my Endless Arrow back.
Yes, yes. Endless Arrow is a beast of a card and should always be blocked as though it was a snatch that said draw 2.
That's awesome.
I cannot explain to players like, yeah, Heat Seeker's good, but Endless Arrow, much better.
Yeah, Endless Arrow honestly seems like one of the best cards in the deck.
Yes. And the next card, Falcon Wing, is the most flexible card in the deck. I love this card. I have a great obsession with this card. I think this is one of my favorite cards to come out of the new set. And it's not due to power level, it's just due to it does everything you want it to do. There's a lot of niche interactions with this card that are really neat.
Okay.
That most people don't think about. So one of them is like, let's say I have a Tunic up, I activate Lexi, and then I cast Codex of Frailty. I can then go get a Falcon Wing, then cast Remorseless. There's not a lot of arrows that in there like innately have go again other than Sikkim Shot, but it costs 1.
Mm-hmm.
So this allows it to be a very flexible Codex of Frailty target. That and it carries buffs really well, not because it's a breakpoint, but because you can play a buff, play this from Arsenal, then activate Voltaire twice without having to reveal to your opponent any more information.
Yeah, Falcon Wing has really impressed me as a card. It's very strong and limited. I've learned, from our drafting prep for the PT, but it's also it's a very good card in Lexi. Like Go Again Arrows is not always something that Rangers had access to. So this extra Go Again Arrow is actually very fascinating to me, and I think honestly really good. So I'm glad to hear that you like that card because this has been pretty high on my card list from outsiders as far as things are concerned.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of it. It's also that, and like there's some turns like I believe you watched the finals where you'll have like 2 or 3 ponders and you'll draw 2 or 3 cards and you'll look at them, and if one of them's a Falcon Wing, you're just like, let's go.
Yep.
You're like, wow, that's the best Arsenal card in the game. Let's go. And then you just throw it in the Arsenal and just be happy about it. It's also one of the best Heat Seeker targets. So if you Heat Seeker into it, it's like you can put down from any card in your hand from a ponder token straight into your Arsenal without having to think.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially knowing that it's just free Go Again.
Yeah, Heat Seeker is a 1 for 5, threatening 8. This is a good card. Of course, it's one of the 18 on hits that's relevant into Lexi. It's probably why Lexi, I think, is the de facto best deck right now.
Okay.
I'm a little biased.
I mean, I get it. I would be biased in your situation too, but Lexi is definitely a very good deck. I mean, being 4 of the top 8 decks and the Pro Tour this past weekend, and I believe it was 2 or 3 of the top 8 in the calling as well. I mean, like Lexi's had a very good showing this weekend, and I think Heat Seekers definitely has something to do with that.
Yeah. Heat Seeker just having this relevant on hit, and then it block. I mean, of course, all the arrows block 3, but it just being a great turn ender on 6.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels so good every time. Of course, there are like once your New Horizons break, this card is actually a liability, and there's stuff like that you always have to remember.
Sure.
But those aren't things that you try to remember. It's like, Infecting Shot. What a card. What a breakout card of the set.
This card has been absolutely crazy. From draft to CC, this card is at the top of the power list right now, especially at common.
Yeah, a blue's a yellow's a red's a I don't even know. It's just really good. So our original build of the list actually didn't even run red Infecting Shot. It
Interesting.
Played 3 yellow. Because we decided that the power level of the yellow was so high that we would like the flexibility of the pitch.
Okay.
But then Aaron was like, hey, if this card is as strong as we think it is, why don't we just play red and beat face? And I was like, you know what? I think you're on to something. like, so yeah, so we just playing reds. And our original build, we had 9, I think, before this, and then we were just like, we talked ourselves down from that. We're like, ah, we can't run 9 infecting shot. People think we're silly. We're just silly. So we ended up on just 6. I could definitely go to 9, and I won't say a single word about it.
I mean, 6 seems very reasonable because, you know, the red ones are obviously your powerhouse cards. Like, these are the cards that are looking to push, like 7 to 8 or 9 points of damage, off of the Pox token, counting that. So, I mean, you're getting a lot of value there. But, even late game, infecting shot for 4, like the blue one, is very solid at the end of the game, or like a turn ender. I know that infecting shot's also a very good codex target if you have a resource floating.
Oh yeah, it is. It is fantastic, and it's a great card into Oldhim, which is a matchup that I think a lot of Lexi players think is favored, and I think it is favored, but the skill level of having to pitch stack inertias is just, oh, mind-boggling.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I was like, I know it's definitely a very skill intensive matchup, and I think pitch stacking is super relevant as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, but now Oldhams are actually starting to become aware of how to pitch stack, and they're playing Righteous Cleansing in response to that, and they're trying to counteract your pitch stack.
That is super interesting.
Yes, it's annoying.
I bet it is.
Yes.
So up next, we have a card that I'm actually very intrigued to hear you talk about. When I think of the lace cards, I think Azalea. I think, 0 for 3 pumps that are just trying to dominate some arrows. So tell me about why Lace with Blood Rot made it into your deck and why it's a 2 of.
Okay, so the idea is it's a 0 for 5 situationally. It's a 0 for 3 pump, which is great, but it still provides a breakpoint onto your 0 arrows to 7. Name and go again. Well, that's a fantastic rate. And if your opponent is putting cards in front of your cards to block, I feel like I already win that matchup. So if I'm playing in the mirror match and I'm throwing this down and then I'm throwing a steering shot for 7, threatening 10, and you don't block, well then my 2-card 10 is better than anything else you could have.
No, absolutely. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I get like you really try to use this card to like either swing tempo into your favor, or if you already have it, continue to really drive it home.
Yo, yeah. Like leading with this card. So whenever I played Lexi, I would draw 4 cards, and my first thought is, how many arrows am I shooting? Am I shooting 1 arrow or 2 arrows? And is the 4th card in my hand either going to be an arsenal card or is it going to be a buff card?
Okay.
And that's kind of like how I process every hand during the calling. As I would draw a hand up, and it'd be blue, arrow, and then usually something else. So if it's like a Codex of Frailty, then you know that your second arrow is going to have a go again clause on it. You're going to play your Codex and beat face. And it's the same with Lace with Blood Rod. So it's like I look at my hand, I have a blue, 2 arrows, and a lace. So I was like, okay, no arsenal this turn. I'm just going to throw 17 damage at them and with 3 on hits and see what happens.
And just stop it if you can. I mean,
Yeah.
asking questions is generally a lot better than trying to answer questions in card games, I've learned. So I like that. That's a really interesting card.
Oh yeah, we weren't asking any questions. We were telling everybody the answers. Like, hey.
Oh, that's awesome.
So pre-med, I only run 2 in the main board. I actually am a little bit lower on pre-med than I think other players.
Okay.
I do think the card is nuts. Like I'm not gonna go out of my way and tell you not to play it. That's
sure.
Yeah, there's 3. But I found the card against blocking decks as a 0 for 3, not as good as I wanted it to be. Decks you always wanted to maintain an arsenal against, which would be the mirror, decks you want a Phi, stuff you want to go long into, I would play into all 3. But then Oldham, Bravo, I tended to just side them out.
So if you were playing into like an Oldham or Bravo, you're saying that you cut all the premeditates and so you have them all on the sideboard? Okay, interesting.
Yeah, because like I know that on hit's relevant as a ponder, but it's like, would I rather that or would I rather be another arrow? So it's like I would think I'd rather have another relevant on hit as an arrow.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, but I do think the card is absolutely nutty in the matches you bring it in, and I think the card is fantastic. But sometimes you also get you go like premeditate, do something, codex, and then you have 2 ponders, which is in a redundant effect.
Right.
And when you have that redundant effect, you're just like, okay, well, I guess I get to pick the best one. But at the same time, there was like, if I could spread these across different turns, that'd be great. So I'm playing 2 in the main for now. Later it might go to 3 in the main, depending on the situations that happen. But as of right now, I like 2 in the main, 1 in the side, and they are probably one of my first cuts.
Okay, that's very interesting. So what's like 1 or 2 matchups you would want to bring the third premeditate in for?
Oh, Briar, Fi, the Mirror, anything that your opponent doesn't block. If you think your opponent's not going to block, I like it. I think it's fantastic.
Okay.
But any deck like Bravo, like a defensive Bravo, an Oldham, heck, I would say probably even maybe Dory. Just
Okay.
decks that you think could block you out or could fatigue you. I didn't like it.
Okay. No, that's fair. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Searing Shot, cool card. 0 for 4. It is just a role player. That's all it does. It's just a good on hit. It's probably my most hit Codex of Fidelity target throughout the weekend,
Okay.
just because of that 1 life. Because getting back like an endless arrow doesn't actually do anything in theory, because you just get the ponder token. So you're just like, okay.
Sure.
So 95% of the time, I just got Searing Shot. It was just for the 1 extra damage. It's a great card. It's just safe. It'll probably be once new arrows are out, it's probably the first one I cut.
Okay. That's interesting. So blue searing shot is something that I've seen some people running and some people not running. I heard somebody say that they like blue searing shot for the mirror. Is that how you feel about it, or is there another reason that you have the blues in here as well?
The reason I have blue Searing Shots is because I couldn't find blue fatigue shots the night before the calling. So I was like, I would go online and like look at random public lists. I'd be like, oh, he's playing blue Searing. I think I have 3 of those. Let me go find them. And then I put them in my list, and now I'm 16 rounds deep in the calling, and I can tell you, I have no idea how I truly feel about blue Searing Shot.
Oh,
I
that's
draw it,
amazing.
I'd pitch it. Sometimes I'd play it for 3, threaten at 4. I don't know. It was just a card. Like I don't know how to explain it. It was just a blue Searing Shot, man.
It's hilarious to me that you were playing cards that you didn't even like. You wanted to play other cards, but you didn't own them. I don't know many people that can say that and still get second in a calling. That's a very impressive thing that you could hang up on your wall.
I don't know if it's impressive or sad.
Either way, but I choose to say impressive because it feels better.
3 of a kind, cool card. I am not big on this card either, actually, and I know that's gonna. I think to maximize this card, you have to block, which is hilarious to me. That the
Okay.
tone card requires you to block, because in theory, to maximize a 3 of a kind turn, you want to block 6, and then cast 3 of a kind, and then play 2 arrows. So
Right.
that's how you play this card, which is super interesting. So your opponent knows you have, like, if I'm playing in the mirror and the guy's coming in with Heat Seeker for 6, and I throw down 6, and I have a card in my arsenal and 2 in my hand, he knows I'm about to 3-oak him. It's just like blatantly out loud, which is I think is such an interesting card.
I mean, so I honestly think that speaks to the power level of 3 of a kind. Is that it's designed to be able to allow you to block, block 6 and then still have a pretty effective turn. And I mean, honestly, like kind of what you're talking about, I think is honestly maybe not something that everybody realizes, because I've seen a lot of people not block and then play the 3 of a kind, and then they're stuck with 2 cards in their hand at the end of the turn.
Yeah, that should never happen. You should always be hoping that the top of your deck is like 2 red arrows and a blue, and you're just gonna rip off like 10 damage after you blocked like 9 on their turn, and just like, oh. One thing is, if you have extra now, you always have the Quiver of Rustling Leaves, which is a very cool card. It's like Bullseye Bracers, except for it's a lot crappier, and you get it's 3 resources. But other than that, it's pretty cool.
It is a nice addition to have. I know that I don't know if you use it every game or not, but I think it's neat to have even if you didn't use it. I know we're kind of like jumping around here a little bit, but while we're talking about the Quiver, how often would you say that you actually use this during the calling?
I used it every probably 2.5 to 3 games.
Okay.
Against I think round 10, I played against the New Horizons Azalea list. And he sedation shot at me.
Okay.
dominated. And I was like, man, in my arsenal. So in my hand was like a blue 3-oak. And my arsenal was a 3-oak. And I was like, and I have and I have an inertia token.
Okay.
And I looked at Jacob and I was like, man, I guess we're doing this. I'll cast 3-oak from hand. I'll cast 3-oak from arsenal. I'll activate Quiver twice. Activate Perch Grapplers. It's just like,
Wow.
I was like, I guess we're doing this.
And just throw as much as you physically can at him.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only line I had. I was like, yeah.
I mean, for being the only line that you had, you drew 6 cards in one turn, so that's not a bad only hand there. While we're up here, let's talk about the rest of your equipment suite here. New Horizons being, a legendary headpiece. I feel like one of the key components to a good Azalea deck.
Oh. Yeah. To be honest though, the Azalea list that plays it is super cool. I think it has to be one of the hardest decks to pilot though. Watching Jacob pilot it, my mind went numb. Like it felt like soup watching him try to play it. I'm like, oh god. He's like, I'll activate Azalea, and he'd just be blind flipping, and he'd be like, oh, anyway, here's a Barbed Castaway, and I was like, crap, card looks really good. Yeah, but New Horizons is a broken equipment. It just like alters the game and how it's played.
It is very interesting. Having 2 arsenal slots is something that I honestly you only see with this, and this card is extremely powerful. On a side note, for anybody who's wondering, I said that New Horizon is a Azalea staple as a joke, because the New Horizon Azalea deck is designed to beat the Lexi deck. So just anybody who's watching and doesn't understand that, I did say that as a joke. But New Horizon is an extremely powerful headpiece.
I like the joke. I thought it was pretty good.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So next up we have Tunic. I feel like this is a card that needs no introduction, but
oh man, I'll tell you what, I was trying so hard not to play Trench. Tunic is just 1 resource every 3 turns. I mean, that's what it does. The card is a staple. If you don't know how good it is now, I was like, be playing the game.
Yeah, man. This is a card that needs no introduction.
Yeah, it's Tunic. Bullseye Bracers. This card's nutty, and this card being a common blows my mind. Like, this card just saves you. Like, you'll have hands where you're just like, okay, like on a 3-oak turn to guarantee that you get 3 arrows off. Bullseye Bracers, Bolt and Shot Red, coming in for 5. Your opponent has to respect the 5, or you get 4 arrows in a turn.
Right.
There's little things like that. They have to respect the card. I mean, it is a powerful card, and it'll be hard to power creep this without the game exploding.
Yeah, Bullseye Bracers is a very strong card, and I know that it's not something that probably comes up maybe super relevant in the current meta, but I do like that it randomly has Arcane Barrier 1 built in. I do think that's a really neat, it's a cool design. Like these random common equipment that have AB on them is actually really neat in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the card. I might even go buy like a gold foil later.
Oh man,
I think it looks great.
It is
Snapdragon's Killers. Oh, what can I say about this card that I haven't said it in Briar?
I mean, I feel like everybody knows this card. This feels like another card that does not need an introduction.
Oh no, it's generically good. Yeah, it gives everything in your deck go again. Which is pretty relevant, especially if you have like a bad heat seeker turn is usually where I used it.
Okay.
Or if you want to really push an endless arrow. Those are my 2 big uses of this card.
Okay, that's awesome, and that's cool to know.
Yeah, post this tournament, I assume it's going to be used on Bolt and Shot on a Frailty Trap a lot for the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, that makes sense while people are learning the Lexi deck.
Yes, that's going to be... Yeah, Voltaire Strike twice. It's the last remaining Majestic.
I was like, it's the last one. It's the last of its class.
Yes, and I know a lot of people want to ban this card, but unlike Oldham, I don't think this deck actually functions without it.
I don't think you can ban this card personally. This card makes the deck hum. You're cutting Lexi's legs out from under her if you ban this card.
If you want to ban a card without hurting anything else, it's 3 Oak. It's as simple as that. It's just ban 3 of a kind, because you can't ban Bolt and Shot without killing Azalea. You can't ban Codex without killing Uzuri. 3 Oak is the only card that's used in this deck that's strictly a Lexi card.
I completely agree, and that makes a ton of sense.
Now let's talk about Codex.
Yeah.
Oh
Now,
boy.
This is definitely the hot topic card to talk about.
Yeah, the card's great. Yeah. It's exactly as good as you think it is, but might be even a little bit better. The mirror revolves around Frailty tokens. So
Okay.
me and T played, I think it was round 7 of the calling. I think our first 5 turns we didn't take any damage because it was just Frailties into Frailties into Frailties. You know, he'd be like a red Frailty shot, oh no, weathering shot, and I was like, Codex of Frailty. So we just did no damage.
Man.
Frailty. Yeah, it was
Frailty traps left and right. That's crazy to think about.
Yeah, but let me tell you about Codex of Frailty. The strength of this card is it's the 4th card in your hand. It's not a 1-card hand that's good. I actually don't think you should ever place on a 1-card hand into a large majority of opponents. The reason being,
Okay.
because a lot of people want to think of the card as, oh, you're taking a card out of your opponent's hand. Yes, you are. But you're also putting the card back into their arsenal.
Right.
And it's a better card that they're discarding.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of this card in reality is you want it to be your 3rd arrow. So you want to go Searing Shot Red, Heat Seeker with Go Again, and then Codex of Frailty after everything is done. Because that way you have cards out of their hand, and then you can actually take a card out of their hand for blocking. But I've seen a lot of people on like Talishar or I'll like talk to players, and they'll just block with 3 arrows and then go Codex of Frailty, go get, Endless Arrow back. And I'm just like, you're about to get punched in the face by that Spinal.
Yeah, no, I've definitely seen that line of play too. I didn't see that as much on day 2 of the calling, for sure. But this card has just like it has a very bonkers power level. I mean, Frailty token is it's just so good, and the Ponder token is very on rate. Like this card is generally worth 7, 8, 9 points. Like the Codex of Frailty is a very good card, and I honestly think we'll see this card played for a long time as long as it doesn't get hit by the ban hammer.
I don't think it'll ever get banned. Honestly, I think it is. I think it's going to be a card in which we look back at and we go, yeah, this was a benchmark of the power level that they wanted the game to be at.
Yeah, no, I definitely buy that. Like, I really hope the card doesn't get banned. I think this is one of those cards that can be figured out how to play around. You just need time for it to be in the format.
Yes. Also, I love this card in Uzuri.
It is very good in Uzuri too.
Yes, I played against Colin Swisher and he played it, and he played some of the coolest lines of Flesh and Blood I've ever seen.
That's awesome.
Rain Razors. This card's great. I do think people misplay this card a lot after watching a lot of players play it.
Okay.
I think this card should be pitched unless it's a 0 for 6. If you're getting a 0 for 4, it's probably not worth playing. And I hate saying that as a Briar player. I love my 0 for 4s.
I do see this played as a 0 for 4 quite regularly. Not only like in testing or like in armories or anywhere. Like I see that played as a 0 for 4 quite regularly. Do you feel that you see this as a 0 for 6 during first cycle regularly, or do you normally have to pitch deck this for this to be a 0 for 6?
Well, whenever I draw it, I start trying to look at my hand and the lines that I can where I can arsenal it for the next turn.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're playing against an Oldham that's playing very, very fatiguey, what you can always do is you can always lead on like a big arrow. So Heat Seeker for 5 with Go Again. He's got to put 2 cards down, Crown, Rampart, and a card from hand, which leaves him 3 cards, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But then what you could do is activate Voltaire, giving Bolt and Shot +1, go straight to the end of your turn, Arsenal, Rain Razors, pass. And then like set up a 6-card hand that the Rain Razors will probably do a 0 for 8.
Okay, that's awesome. So yeah. You do find it relatively easy, I mean, generally speaking, to play it and it be a 0 for 6 or 0 for 8, be an above rate card on your first cycle.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's not hard. You just have to look at the sequencing of your hands and understand that to maximize this card, you might have to take, I don't know, one arrow off. But to maximize this card in a single turn is a lot more valuable because of the fact that when you maximize this card, your opponent's gonna have to block, and those last arrow or two, they're gonna have to either give away their whole entire turn and time walk themselves for blocking, or they're just gonna have to take it.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's a really good way
Yeah.
to look at this card.
Yeah, it maybe one day in the next week I'll sit down with you and we can stream a couple of games with Lexi and I can show you how to set up those big turns.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so next card's Frostlock. This card was an overperformer and I will be playing 3 for Road to Nationals.
Okay, awesome.
Even with 3 ice cards in the main board, this card was an overperformer, which sounds funny. The Channel Lake Frigid on your turn, which is a fantastic ability. It stops Ice reacting, Earth reacting. It stops Crown Staunch on a bigger turn.
Yep.
But the 1 in a million chance that you get to just draw the Frostlock Ice into like a mirror match. Oh gosh, feels so good. Feels so good.
Well, I was like, it turns into a Breakpoint card, which is very relevant. And I feel like the Channel Lake Frigid line of text is also relevant into other aggro decks. A lot of other aggro decks are looking to play like Sink Belows, like Fate Foreseen, like just these 0 cost defense reactions to help try and build into their strategy to help them pad their life total. So I feel like this card could have a lot of benefit across like all lines of matchups.
Yeah, so an interesting thing that came up was I was playing against Zach Bunn in Swiss before our top 8 match.
Okay.
And I actually got the Frostlock fused on him. I just accidentally just drew the Winter's Bite Frostlock. There's no pitch stacking, it was just pure luck. And he actually had a pitch for a Sink Below.
Oh, that's awesome.
And blocked 2 cards from hand with it. Because when he revealed his equipment, he was revealing Vexing Quell Hand into my Lexi. My mind was blown.
That is very interesting choice.
He did it twice though too. So like he was there for gas. He was there to beat me up.
I mean,
dude, yeah.
You got to have a game plan. So.
Oh, I can tell you what his game plan was. To beat me. Yeah. So the card was fantastic. I'll be playing 3 of, even just 3 of, and then 3 Winter Bites, and then some Arctics on the sideboard. I'm happy with the card. I think.
Okay. Awesome.
Winter's Bite, the best blue in the deck. I'm just gonna straight up, easy, simple like that. Best blue in the deck. It's the only blue that can 1-for-1 your opponent. If they don't have Tunic up or anything like that. I'm a huge fan of this card. I think if you're not playing 3 in Lexi, it's probably suboptimal.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense. This card is like very good. It's very taxing on your opponent, and like this card has a lot of value. Yes. I 100% see this card being very good.
The funnier thing is, me and Aaron talked about this card on the way back. He only played 1 in his deck, and his whole thing was, it's a 2-block blue. I don't want to play a 2-block blue. And I was like, if you're blocking with your blues as Lexi, you've already lost the game. Just don't block at all. I think in the whole calling, I think I might have blocked 3 times before my life was below 15.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I would just look at my hand and just like, you watch the finals. Like, I was just like, I would look at my hand and I'd be like, yeah, I ain't blocking. Okay, you got it.
There were not many turns played. I can definitely say that. There was a lot of no blocks. No blocks.
Yeah, both sides. Yeah, I mean, that's just how this deck works. I think this deck's power level and just raw, damage turn over turn is high enough where there's not many games in which you want to block. And that most of the time, the 4th card in your hand is better as an arsenal than it is to be put on the chain link to block. Now, there are some exceptions, but we'll talk about that when we get to the sideboarding, because I run Perch Grapplers.
Okay, perfect.
I am a Perch Grapplers is an interesting conversation that I'd love to talk about.
I can't wait to get to it.
Yeah, the one Weathering Shot. I really wanted to play 1 Sleep Dart, but I couldn't find it. So I have this.
You guys heard it here. This is the second card that was filled in because he couldn't find another card. You too
Yeah.
can play cards you don't own and just top 8 callings.
Well, yeah. Well, it was like I had this in the original Pro Tour build, and I was like, I really want to sleep dart, and then it's like 11:30 before the calling, and I was like, I don't think I'm gonna be able to go walking down there at 8:45 and find a blue sleeping. So I was like, yeah, whatever. We'll just play it, whatever.
Okay, so you just ended up leaving that in. Going into RTN season, would you still change that to a?
Yeah, I would change it instantly.
Okay.
Actually, just change it to the blue frost lock. That'd be perfect. I didn't even think about that.
I mean, that's actually a very good, just clean swap right there.
Yeah. Sideboarding. This is where I love this sideboard, and it's except for Arctic Incarceration. That card is fantastic. Shouldn't cut it. It's great, but my God, did it screw me.
Yeah, it was a very unfortunate to see 2 copies of that in one hand on a turn when you really didn't need to see 2 copies of it.
It's okay. Afterwards, I was like, oh, I should probably cut that, but I probably shouldn't. The card's fantastic. As that whole theory that I have with Lexi, that the 4th card in hand, it's a great one into red line aggro, which is where I played it. So it's good into Briar, it's good into Dromai, it's good into Phi. So the basic process, like I mentioned earlier, you look at your hand, you always want a blue, 2 arrows, and then whatever the 4th card is. The 4th card could be another arrow that you arsenal.
Okay.
Could be a setup card for next turn, so a 3 oak, Artivore, Codex, even a lace. Like sometimes it's correct to just arsenal lace and just kind of have a bigger setup turn with the 3 arrows.
Okay.
So Arctic Incarceration fits that schema where you want to either end your turn with it depending on the way that they blocked. So if they block you a lot as a red deck, because you shouldn't be playing into blue decks.
Mm-hmm.
But so if I'm playing against Phi and they block 2 cards on my thing, I'm just gonna arsenal this and wait for next turn to really mess with them.
Okay, really try to like shut down like a big turn they might be trying to have.
Yeah. Now Death Touch.
This is a card, man. This is a card.
Yes, it's great. I play it in 2 matches though, just 2.
Okay, was not expecting to hear that. What 2 matches do you play it into?
I played it into Oldham because it is the best card to reveal off your Lexi ability and then shoot arrows at him.
Yep.
Have this card still come at him. And Dromai, it's a popper.
That makes sense. Yeah. As an Oldham player, this card is very good because I have to stare at it while you are throwing arrows at me, which is a terrifying place to be if you are trying to block. So
yes. Every time I played this card in the calling, I only named Inertia. So
interesting.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense, especially playing into Oldham.
Yeah, it's like if I can keep Oldham off an arsenal, I can usually just win first cycle.
Yeah.
Like, straight up, just like
not being able to block.
Yeah. And they have to take damage to block. Down and dirty, by the way.
I have been waiting to talk about this card.
Just go buy your copies. Just go buy 3 of them.
That's what everybody's been telling me.
I only play it in 1 matchup, which is Dromai.
Yep.
And this card swings a 10% win rate by itself. Just simple as that.
That's awesome.
The card's nuts. There was actually a line, I think it was round 4 or 5, I played against a Dromai where I Codex of Frelity to him. I would go get this. I'd activate Lexi. I'd arsenal like something else and pass turn to him.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So he's just like, okay, well if I attack you, it just ends my turn. So he just went pass. And I was like, oh. And so I just got to keep it up for like 2 turns, and he never swung with a single dragon because of it.
So you just get to keep having 2 card, like 6 card hands and staring at them with the down and dirty. That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this card. Play 3. If you're most decks, play 3, especially with ponder tokens though. Because of ponder, you can ponder into this card, put in your arsenal, so it feels really good when you ponder into a down and dirty.
That's awesome. I will make sure to buy my cards tomorrow. Yes,
it's fantastic. Frelity Trap. This was our like little fun tech that we thought was going to be good, and it was great. I ended many Lexi turns, and it was And then I played one in Pro Tour. Then Aaron played him later in the calling, and he says that the player actually went go again on Bolton shot, and Aaron just started laughing.
Oh
He's
my
like,
gosh.
yeah, he's like, oh, I know what happened to you, buddy. I was like, he's like, yep,
Oh
it's
man,
same jersey. I was like,
that is crazy.
uh,
So looking at Frailty Trap, is there a matchup that you want this in besides the mirror?
I didn't put it in anything outside of the mirror. In testing, I played it into Dory, but I don't know if that's
Okay.
correct. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if that was correct. I'm playing into Dory
Okay.
because Dom Blade never actually gets go again until it hits, like
Right.
Warriors Valor and the boots. So, I mean, it's still a 0 for 3, so it's never going to be like the worst card.
Mm-hmm.
But as of right now, I'm only playing it into the mirror.
Okay. That sounds good.
Oh, I guess you could also make a case for Riptide, but uh, uh, just you can just beat Riptide.
That's kind of what I thought your game plan was going to be into Riptide. I'm just better than them, and I'll just beat them.
To be fair, round 11, table 2 was Riptide.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
There was a Riptide at the top 16.
That's really cool.
Yes, it was a great time. We had, yeah, I knew the guy, and I was like, oh my, I was geeking out as much as he was.
That's awesome.
Lightning Press. Only play it into Oldham.
Is this card kind of like a gotcha? Just a way to push through extra damage?
Yeah, it's a gotcha, but it's also a great arsenal that when you flip it with Lexi, your Oldham player then has to respect every attack until you use it.
Yep.
Plus that, it's a 0 for 4. So, it's a 0 for 4 because you can flip it with Lexi and then give your next arrow +1. So, I like it. I think it's great. I only played into Oldham and I guess Dash in the finals, but I don't really. My mind wasn't in the right space for that one. I wasn't really thinking yet.
Tired at the end of a long weekend, man. That makes sense. But I like this card into Oldham. I feel like you probably get some fear factor out of this card
Yes.
too.
So the reason we have 2 instead of 1 is once you play the second one, your opponent has to respect the third one.
Right. No, that honestly that makes sense. Like it's mind games. Like
Yeah.
and I
Like,
get that.
It's like, oh, we're almost near the end of the first cycle, and we haven't seen the third one. He's playing 2 because most Lexis play 1,
Right.
so he's probably playing 3. So then just kind of respect it, and then you can just kind of punish off the respect.
Okay. So we kind of talked about the third premeditate earlier and where we do and don't like this. Remorseless. This is I really like this card. I think it's a very good arrow.
Yes, I will probably be going up to 3, but I think it's meta dependent. This card is infecting shot, but better into anything that's not a guardian.
Okay.
That's like the best way for me to explain it. It is a great card into everything that is not a guardian.
So you really like this card into like Fi, Briar, like the aggro decks?
The mirror is fantastic.
Okay.
Azalea is great. This is actually my favorite arrow to throw at Azalea on like a red and ledger turn. Just throw a 6 at them. If they don't block it, it's going to be a 1 for 9.
That's awesome. Okay, that's a really good card, and it's awesome to have tech into red and the ledger because that's not a lot of things that not a lot of decks can say that they have. You know, like I mean, obviously you're playing sync belows, you know, or defense reactions, but like
if you want some tech into Azalea, you can always just take a lightning press.
I mean,
like, hey, you run ledgered me. I'm just gonna press you on this attack that I only have 1 action point on.
You have lightning pressed me in multiple decks, multiple different times, so that is like the Taylor special as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, it's just whenever you pair against me, you're like, there's a press in there somewhere. I know there is. Sleep Dart. So dragons no longer have go again. That's a big one.
Yep.
A bigger one that we found out was some Lexis will play Perch Grapplers into you, which makes sense. But if you hit them with a Sleep Dart, they don't have a way to flip the card face up, so they can't use Voltaire.
Oh, okay.
That happened in an earlier round in the calling where I'd hit my opponent. They go to their turn and they have like a 4-card hand and 1 in arsenal and they're playing Purchase.
Okay.
And they just have to end their turn. They can play their like 1 arrow from arsenal and pass.
Right.
because of Sleep Dart. And that, I mean, of course that was on them, but like that is a relevant thing that will happen if you play enough Lexi, is that your opponent will forget about Sleep Dart and what the actual abilities are and the ways it affects their turn cycles.
So when looking at this card, do you like this card into Azalea as well?
That's something that me and Aaron talked about. I just like big arrows into Azalea. So yeah, instantly I would just play it as a 1 for 5 with no tax.
Just because it's a red arrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, just keeping up a density of damage is probably good enough for Azalea.
Okay.
Yeah. Codex of Inertia, the most skill-intensive card I've ever played.
Okay. That's a pretty big statement.
Yeah. Well, to play this card 100% correctly, you have to pitch stack it, remember your pitch stack, and then play it on your pitch stack in the correct line to maximize the damage of the card. So if you pitch it, you have to remember, I think it's up to 4 cards deeper, all 4 in a row, to know exactly how to play it.
Okay.
And then when you're pitching it, you also have to pitch correctly. I think this card is very tough to play.
So a lot of moving parts, a lot of things to
Yes.
focus on and remember what's going on with this card.
Yes. Now, can you play it first cycle? Of course. Yeah. You can just like slam it and just, you know, have one off turn against your Oldham player and hope you draw the nuts.
Sure.
But like to maximize it, you have to pitch it. You have to remember the next 4 cards. And the reason I say 4 is because you flip 1 to the top, you then ponder, and then you want to set up the next 2 cards as powered cards. So because you're removing your Oldham from an arsenal, you want to set it up as like Codex of Inertia, Infecting Shot, Rain Razors, and then a 3-oak and another blue or another arrow.
Okay.
Yeah, so because you want the card you flip off Inertia to be an arrow to swing at them that turn.
Right.
You want the next card to be a setup, and then you want the next card to be a setup, and then the next card to be a blue.
So there really are a lot of moving pieces when it comes to this card. I mean, I'm sure like any other card, you can play it in the blind and just kind of take your chances. But
yeah.
I mean, so this card really values the more what I would call skill adept, like functionalities of the game and like
Yes.
mechanics of the game.
Yeah, there was actually an Oldham matchup I did not play this into, which would be the top 8 against Randall Sims, I believe.
Interesting.
I'll explain why, and it was really interesting. So this was actually a meta-dependent Oldham. We did the deck reveal before, we did like a deck thing where you can look
The
at your
deck
opponent's
list?
at the top. Yeah, and his deck is like the most aggressive Oldham I've ever seen.
Okay.
I was sweating whenever they showed me the deck list. It was like 3 red disables. I was like, what?
Wow.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, it was, trying to remember all the reds he had. He had like 2 pulverized, 3 pummels. I was like, pummel and Oldham? Oh god.
Jeez.
3 red disables, 3 crushed confidences, 2 thunderquakes, no fate for scenes. So I knew his plan isn't to fatigue me. So I
definitely
so I
doesn't
didn't
sound like
play
it.
into him. I was like, I didn't even play it into him. I was like, we're just gonna play the the punch game.
I mean, that makes sense. So it is interesting, though, because, that's not something that you would normally have like in the Swiss rounds of a tournament, for all the people who are preparing for their, local road to nationals and things like that. Would you say that it is more often safe to put Codex of Inertia in against the Oldham hero?
Yes, and Bravo. I think it's good against Bravo, Icelander. Any deck that utilizes their arsenal to a high efficiency, I would use it into.
Okay, awesome. That's cool.
Yeah, I can update my list and then have a better sideboarding guide. I think correct sideboarding will always help every player. So my list will be pretty clean once you put it out on the YouTube.
That is one of the things that I think more like that's not talked about enough is that, people are like, oh, I did everything I could. And it's like, you did everything you could within the game, but how did you sideboard? Like, what cards did you bring in? Some people over sideboard, some people under sideboard too often. It's very interesting. And having a specific plan and not just having random cards in your sideboard, I feel like 100% changes how someone's weekend will go playing cards.
100%.
So I want to talk about Perch Grappler's last here because I know you said there's like a little bit of a story there and you kind of want to break that down. So I know that the other quiver is kind of like anti-fatigue tech.
Yes, I played and I play it into Oldhams, and I play it into Bravos, and I play it into Dorinthias.
Okay, so do you feel like Dorinthia is trying to fatigue you a little bit when you're playing into them?
Some of them, yeah. I have been almost fatigued by Dorinthia 2 or 3 times,
Interesting.
and I mean they were playing like I mean Oasis Respite and stuff like that. So
Oh, gotcha. So they were on definitely a more defensive build
defensive,
of the deck.
yeah, yeah. So I just like to put it in there for any chance. The opportunity cost of losing uh the other quiver is
Mm-hmm.
fine. For the inevitability of this one. So,
Okay. No, that makes sense.
I just always recommend never activating the quiver first cycle, ever,
Okay.
because then your deck gets worse. You always want to activate it as soon as you get the second cycle, because you're pitching blues. So if you activate it first cycle, you actually increase your blue count in the cards you're about to draw.
Interesting.
Yeah, so just keep that in mind when playing that card.
I was like, that's a good tidbit of knowledge to have for anybody who's looking to pick up this deck.
Yeah. Okay, Perch Grapplers. This is where me and my team kind of differ. I personally play Perch Grapplers into every single hero except for the Mirror, Dromai, and Oldham.
The
And
Mirror,
Icelander.
Dromai, Oldham, and Icelander. So you
Yep.
run Snapdragons into those, but you run Perch Grapplers into everything else.
Yes.
Okay, walk me through that a little bit and tell me why.
Okay, so let's take an idea. Let's look at Briar.
Okay.
Briar's going to throw a snatch at you. I only want to lose one card. So Perch Ezo always got me there. The Peach Cobblers, if you will.
Yep.
I can always throw Peach Cobblers and one card from hand to stop the tempo gain there. But if I'm on Snappies, it's 2 cards, and I am always trying to minimize the cards I'm throwing down blocking.
Okay.
So, plus that block is strong. I
So
have never activated this card, by the way, also. I just want to specify anyone that plays the deck and then activates this card, probably don't.
so this card says block 2. Like
Yeah,
for I would say 95% of the time, and then probably like 5% of time, maybe corner case scenarios where you actually use the card.
I've never used it, so I don't even know what it feels like to use it. I would probably have to read the card. All I know is it says block 2 on it. It's like,
Okay, so
dang,
this
that's some
card
good
blocks
Ironhide.
2.
That's some good Ironhide.
That is good to note.
Yeah, and that's just kind of like how I've always played the thing. The reason I don't play it into Oldham, which is something that like we always talked about, is
Mm-hmm.
that I find that the value I get from Snapdragon Scalers is probably about 7. This is only 2. Uh, this does have its benefits into any deck that's also going to Command and Conquer you. Is you can play Codex of Frelity. They get Command and Conquer back. They play Command and Conquer. It's for 5. That's Peach Cobblers and one card from hand.
That is definitely a lot of value.
Yes.
I mean, you're getting to go in, you keep your arsenal, and you keep 3 cards in your hand. That's a very powerful play coming off of a Codex turn.
Yes. I also believe that they should never ever CNC you. No hero should play CNC into you unless they have Pummel in their decks.
Interesting.
I am very low on CNC into Lexi, which I know sounds wild.
It does sound very wild. And if you told me this before we were about to play, I would 1000% think you're trying to get in my head. But why do you feel that way?
So the reason I feel that way is because as soon as I see the first one, I'm gonna play around the rest of them, and you're just throwing a 2 for 6 at me.
Okay.
It's like, because I mean, unless it's hit from a Ponder, so a Ponder or a Heat Seeker trigger, uh, I'm not gonna let you get value off of your CNC. I'm gonna play my hands out to maximum value and try to run you over while still playing around the CNC. I'm not gonna
Okay.
set myself up to get punished.
No, I mean, and that makes sense, and I think that that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
So anybody out there who's thinking Command and Conquer is just broken into Lexi, you have been warned.
Yes. So some notable cards that I'm not playing in my list is CNC. For the same reason. Like this was something that we all talked about. Is
Okay.
that I know like so some notable cards that I'm not playing in my list compared to like Matt W,
Okay.
which is the Magnolia team's list.
Right.
So we of course talked to Matt. We're good buddies. We're not playing Battering Bolt. I found Battering Bolt to be a lot worse than just Death Touches. His reasoning for playing Battering Bolt was that he could Abyssal it back into his deck, which seemed, if you're Abyssaling into Dromite, you probably already lost the game.
Okay.
He's playing like red fatigue shots. I found the Bravo matchup to already be positive, so I just wanted to beat their face in. Now blue fatigue shot I understand because that card is awesome, but I didn't have any. Lightning Surge, which is a big card that I was missing that me and Aaron, my teammate, also talked about. The reason I didn't want to play it is because it does the Falcon Wings job, but doesn't get buffed by Rain Razors.
Okay, yeah. So it's interesting to hear you say that. Lightning Surge is one of those cards that I did see. I think it was Matthew McInnes actually. I saw him playing it at the Pro Tour, and I know that a lot of people have been playing that in Lexi because it fits into Lexi's ability and gives other attacks go against and things like that. So I'm honestly, as somebody who's not played a ton of Lexi, I am inclined to agree with you. It feels pretty mid from what I understand. But I'm intrigued to hear you say that.
Yeah. Some other notable misses are Blue Bolt and Shot. I think now that I've played the list, I don't like Blue Bolt and Shot as a card. And I
Okay.
understand why. The reason is, have you ever played Icelander?
Yeah, I love Icelander.
What's your feelings on Blue Acer Icebane?
It feels very medium.
Exactly. The card is very medium. That's it.
Okay.
That's it.
That is honestly probably the best way I've ever heard to compare it. When you asked me if I like to play Icelander, I was like, where's this going? But no, I honestly like Blue Ether Icebane feels extremely mid inside of Icelander. So to hear that you describe Blue Bolt and Shot that way honestly makes a lot of sense to me, and is like I like that comparison. I think that's a very good comparison, especially for anybody who ends up watching this who has played a lot of Icelander before.
Yeah, it's like I understand its purpose in the deck and I understand why you play it, but when you play it, you just feel bad. You're just like, oh man.
Yeah, no, I get that, and I feel that makes sense.
Yeah, and it has no relevant on hit, and it's not a breakpoint. The reload is always a relevant on hit, but you also want to think about it. It's a 0 for 3. It's a single card block. Not as good.
Right.
So some other cards that we did test and looked at was Tar Pit Trap.
Okay.
I think the card is great if it's a lot of Katsu. I think it's really good into Katsu.
Okay.
Red Sedation Shot is a card we looked at, but I don't think that you need it into Oldhim yet. I don't think Oldhim has gotten so inbred that you need to play that just as a yet. I think if you're good enough and you can play 100% proficiency or 90% proficiency, I think this list is good enough.
So
Yeah.
do you ever feel like maybe if you were sitting down at like a local event and you knew that there was 20 people in the room and like 12 of them are Oldhams, do you think that card is worth slotting in just at the chance that you're going to play against a lot of Oldhams?
Yeah, I would play it. It would either be that or Red Winter's Bite. I think those would be similar slots.
Okay. I also like Red Winter's Bite. That's a very strong card and can definitely be very taxing against a lot of decks.
Yeah, Red Winter Bite was definitely a card that we were looking at and testing as a team. But at the end of the day, we found that the point to be mute into Oldham. We found that if you just played your cards and you could kind of read their hands, you could just outvalue them and beat them in the face.
Okay. So we've kind of covered the whole deck, and we've kind of covered a lot of the matchups and like cards you like, cards you might change, things like that. Kind of looking at an overall view of the deck. Is there anything, like as a last like kind of like touching note here that you'd like to leave with anybody who's watching this who might be picking the deck up for the first time to play at during RTN season, or maybe somebody who's played a lot of Lexi and they're just kind of looking to like refine their skills a little bit or try a new list?
Yeah, don't be afraid to pitch the power cards to have an efficient turn. I see a lot of players and they'll sequence their whole entire hands and everything around trying to play like a Rain Razors. Don't be. It's okay to pitch a Rain Razors or a Codex of Fidelity in a turn. Don't be afraid of that. If your turn needs you to pitch a card, pitch it. It blows my mind watching a lot of players play a handout just so they can guarantee that they play Codex of Fidelity. But the value that they get off the Codex of Fidelity is less if they just pitched it, if that makes any sense.
I know it absolutely does, and I really like that. I think that's a very good way to look at it, and I think that there are quite a few decks that are also trying to run you to second cycle. So I like pitch stacking, and like putting some of your power cards into your second cycle honestly makes a lot of sense also, as far as everything's concerned.
Yeah, I would love to. I'll maybe in the next week or two, I'll have an updated list for Road to Nationals. I'll update this list into a more modern list that would be post Pro Tour and post calling, and we can sit down and play a few games, and I can explain some lines that I would take.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, honestly, because playing some Lexi games is something I need to do.
Yes.
I like to play heroes so that I can better understand them. So us sitting down one night and getting some games in, and you help giving me some understanding would definitely be beneficial. So yeah, we can try to do that in the next couple weeks sometime before RTN start.
This is the funnest list you'll ever play. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, I'm already excited to try it. But Taylor, I can't say thanks enough, man, for coming on and doing the video. I'm honestly really excited about playing this and trying this, and I think a lot of people are really excited to see your list and kind of get a more in-depth breakdown on how you feel about cards and things like that. So I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me.
Of course.
Well, guys, you heard it from the man himself. Taylor's been here to help us out. The deck link to his deck is in the description below. Be sure to check that out. And he was nice enough to leave his matchup guides in here for us. I don't know a whole lot of people that are okay doing that. So a big shout out to him for being cool with doing that. And I appreciate you guys coming by. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content. And I'll see you guys next time. Take it easy, guys.